Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Liz Bales, and I'm so excited to have my co-host, Steve Dale, back with me again today. And we are extra lucky because our guest today, Dr. Chris Menges, is the Chief Veterinary Officer for Basepaws, which is a DNA company for cats. And we are going to blow that wide open. It's more than you think. And the other thing that we're really lucky for is Dr. Menges also has a master's in public health. So he is not only up to date on what's going on veterinarily, but he can help answer our questions about how the COVID-19 situation involves our pets and ourselves as well. So thank you so much for coming and bringing all your expertise today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is such a great show. Y'all are both such great hosts and voices for the veterinary world, and we love to be able to support and join whenever we can.
And I'm also, as always, lucky to have Steve, who has some breaking news for us.
I do. So before I bring you that breaking news, one other thing that we'll talk about is, are you ready? An exciting announcement. You want my announcement voice?
Yeah. Oh,
let's hear it. Let's hear it.
You've got a great announcement voice. Let's hear it.
So it'll be an announcement regarding the Winn Feline Foundation Ricky Fund, which funds studies for cat health studies, and specifically the Ricky Fund for heart disease in cats, which we'll talk about how common that is, what the signs of it are, so you can watch for it if you have a cat, and some interesting news in itself about that. But the news you're talking about, Dr. Bales, is this. You and I have talked on this platform. I've been talking in my various platforms. And the question that people are asking me more than any other these days, can my dog, can my cat get COVID-19? And with now over 4 million cases, I believe, of humans on the planet of COVID-19, we have positively 2 dogs, one both in Hong Kong, a maybe dog in Belgium. So the dogs that we know about in Hong Kong, an elderly Pomeranian and a German Shepherd dog, actually were identified with COVID-19, dead-ended, so to speak, in those dogs. No threat to people whatsoever. I want to make a point of that. And after I give this little speech, Dr. Menges, I want you to add in. There was about a month and a half ago now, a dog in North Carolina, right here, that was deemed positive. The family was being studied by Duke University as human members of the family had COVID-19, but Duke University said, and I understand why, it's appropriate. Let's look at all the members of the family, which included a cat, another dog, aside from the dog that presumably tested positive. So 2 dogs in the house and a lizard. Not sure what kind of lizard it was. They did not test the lizard. There is no test for lizards for COVID-19 at this time. But they tested all the other animals, and that one dog, a pug, tested positive. When that happened, everyone in the media, national media, flew onto the story. And I said, and you did too, Dr. Bales, wait, not so fast. Veterinarians have not been involved in this. Yes, it may be. We trust and know Duke University, but still something doesn't seem right. And pug people and people with similar breeds like English bulldogs and French bulldogs, etc., said, oh no, my dog breed is more predisposed. So here's what we now know today. That dog is negative. The dog was never, ever positive for COVID-19. The state veterinary bureau looked at this and they said, no, it took weeks for them because they double checked, triple checked. That dog was negative all along. There was never.
This is so important to talk about on a couple of levels. Number one, that good science takes time. Absolutely. And I have posted on this thread on Doc Liz Bales that we owe it to science to be patient. We're very much in a rush, me too, because we all want to know what's going on. And in a novel virus, we have to understand that information is going to come out and we don't really understand all that it means for a little while. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad science or wrong science. It's just, that's the scientific process, is that it takes time. So Steve, you and I have talked a lot about trying to report accurately on breaking science while at the same time explaining that the significance of it, is it true? Is it turns out to be a false positive or false negative? That takes time. And this is a great example of that.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. You know, one of the things that we always think about in epidemiology is, isn't a new virus or any sort of new outbreak, you know, you won't really have good, great communicable data for about 6 months because we have so much of a learning process to do. We'll have the time period that we have to identify a new virus, then a time period to kind of almost backtrack and see, when did it really actually show up? You know, what cases did we miss to start? And then how is it affecting us and how we go from there? So we always start with very protective and wide-arching measures as we learn more and more and can kind of start to hone in on exactly what's causing this.
Now, Dr. Menges, I know we surprised you with this news because Steve is the breaking news here. He's got the scoop. But if you can, could you walk us through what kind of testing this might be and why do we think it's one thing, but then we learn it's another?
Well, there's a lot of different, I mean, when we probably look at what they were doing, they were looking for either an RNA test is my guess. Not exactly sure on that dog itself. Been a little more focused on the cat world at this point in time, so I didn't dive into the pug, but I would expect it to be kind of an RNA test or some sort of sequencing test on there. And there's always the possibility for sample contamination or exactly through their process for getting that false positive. And so that's why we always recommend double, triple checking as we have emerging diseases in those tests until we really can have good, reliable tests that can be kind of commercially mass produced that we're seeing, and of course humans now as well.
And Steve, was there any reporting on the testing process and how we got to this place?
No, I don't, some of that I don't know, and some of it they're not saying.
Yeah,
you know,
well, stay tuned because this is actually happening in the human population, which is one of the things that makes this so scary, is that there are false positives and there are false negatives. And when we're trying to test for something for the first time, we're working out the kinks of the testing process. I forget who it was who said on this show, it's like trying to learn to fly a plane in midair. And that's really what the scientists are doing. So we all need to be patient and show a little grace as we make the best decision as we can with the best information that we can as this is unfolding.
Yeah. And I'm going to be doing a little conversation, if you will, as I am told to do more and more of into video. People like video on my Facebook fan page, which I hope you all like. About some comments that I've received that I almost don't want Dr. Bales to read because she'll be too sad if she reads those. Because, you know, she is a supporter of science, but a supporter of doing our best to just love one another and respect one another at this time. And that's why you won't like those comments. Speaking of comments, if you have any questions or comments,
yes,
please put them. Hi, Kristen. Please type them out here. This is not the time that you and I are typically on when we do these together.
Yeah.
But it's what worked out scheduling wise because we wanted to promote something coming up that's so exciting that we are going to tell you about. You will be amazed, just amazed. Dr. Menges, you are the Chief Veterinary Officer at Basepaws. What is Basepaws?
So Basepaws, we are a feline genetic sequencing company. And so what that means is we have a test, that kit. Basically, we can send you a kit. You can swab your cat's mouth, send that saliva back to us. It actually contains a little bit of cheek cells in it as well. And then we can extract your cat's DNA from that and test its breed relativity to how closely it's how similar it is to a lot of the various pedigreed and purebred breeds out there. Then, as well as that, we also test your cat for health markers for a variety of diseases, about 38 health markers, over 17 diseases. And one of those diseases that we test for one of the markers that we test for, two of them actually, are for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Now, this is one of these markers can help you understand risks or potential diseases that may come up in your cat's life as they get older, or even as they may already be experiencing themselves. So hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is really why one of the things we're so excited about looking at and studying. And that's, I think, why, really why we're here today, is we're talking a little more on Saturday as well for a big deep dive into it. But I like to say it's a disease that affects so many cats. About 15% of the cats do have some level of it. And it's something that we're really excited to look at.
And I lost a cat almost a year ago to the day. Carlos, my Sphinx, he had no signs at all. Yeah. He had no signs at all. And this is before I had your test. And he was meowing in a very strange way at 5 a.m. And I scooped him up and he was ice cold. Oh. Being a vet, you could feel a Sphinx. You can feel their little naked body. So as soon as I saw him in distress and ice cold, I threw a blanket around him and just raced to the emergency hospital because I don't have all the equipment that I need at my disposal like that. And they put the ultrasound probe on him and said it was profound hypertrophic cardiomyopathy that came. Now, of course, the disease itself didn't come out of nowhere, but he wasn't showing any signs.
Right.
So Steve also has major personal experience with this.
Yeah, I'll talk about my personal experience with this in a second. Let's explain what this is.
Yeah.
So we described that it's sometimes called HCM, for feline hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. We've said it's common, all too common, but what is it?
So hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM, we'll break that word down real quick, and it's really kind of defined in its term. So hyper means big, and then trophic means growth. So we're talking about a big growth. Cardio means heart, myo means muscle, and then pathy means disease. So we have a big growth heart muscle disease. And so HCM is where the left ventricle, which helps provide and push the blood throughout the body itself, grows and thickens. The chamber in the heart itself doesn't change, but the muscle itself does thicken. And this makes the muscle less efficient, makes it harder to push that blood throughout the body. And what this really does is it causes a bit of a backup towards the lungs, which is what feeds into the left ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle on there. And so that allows for that increased pressure to have fluid buildup, as well as things like clots that build up that can then be thrown around and cause some very serious and often fatal conditions almost instantly.
And the thing about this disease is Dr. Bales and myself, and I'll talk about myself in a moment, my experience, we were just unlucky. A percent of cats, and different studies indicate different percentages, but about, give or take, a quarter of the cats actually live out a very normal life.
Absolutely.
And many of those cats who ultimately die at the age of 18 of kidney disease related issues or whatever, and have nothing to do, as far as we know, with their heart. We don't even know that they necessarily have this heart disease. And one of the reasons why I talk so much about visiting the veterinarian twice a year, you guys right here are great veterinarians, but I want to hear how you can treat a pet you don't see. So you cannot possibly diagnose this disease if you're not seeing the cat. And although it's changing, still too many cats don't see the veterinarian once a year, let alone my recommendation, which is twice a year. And sometimes not until the cat, in fact, very often, not until the cat is very, very sick. And typically by the time a cat is very, very sick because they mask illness, you've got a disease progress that's been going on for quite some time, actually. And as a veterinarian, I suspect you're working backwards. So one of the signs as a veterinarian, and I want you both actually to comment on your experiences about this, is identifying this really common heart disease with a murmur, sometimes a gallop in the heart, but usually a murmur, and then maybe sending that client onto a veterinary cardiologist. Can you both talk about that?
So heart murmurs in cats are tricky because the loudness of the murmur does not correspond to the significance of the disease. So all you can say when you listen to the heart is, yes, it has a murmur. If we want to know anything else about it, we really have to do more advanced diagnostics. And that means an X-ray, or my preference would be an echocardiogram. And it's expensive. An echocardiogram is $400 or $500, maybe more, depending on where you live. Yeah, it could be much more. So a lot of people, that's not in the budget, which is another reason we can talk about so many different things. But pet insurance for cats is something that most cat people do not engage in. And I know just that appointment with Carlos was well over $1,500. And I'm a vet, right? So pet insurance for cats is a great idea. If you had a cat that was diagnosed with a heart murmur and you had insurance, then that would help to support getting that test. But that's really the only way to know. And you might get news when your cat has a heart murmur, like, this is nothing, don't worry about it. Or you could get the news that it's a disease like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy that needs treatment.
Well, and not only the news that it needs treatment, but it can be fairly far progressed. When we look at HCM, there's a variety of different stagings, and they have been teased out because of that variability in the process. Typically in heart diseases, we've thought of A, B, C, D as kind of A is predisposed, B is a little more subclinical, not so much at an event yet that's needed medication or treatment. C is after a single event, like a first round of heart failure or a clot of some sort, and then D is where the heart disease is no longer responding to drug management. But even in cats, we've had to take the stage B and change that down into a B1 and B2, where because there is so much variability that can be progressed or may just have mild changes that are almost an innocuous finding, something to be watched, but nothing to start medication on as well.
So some of these cats, the only way that the family members know is when the cat suddenly dies. It is the #1 cause of sudden death in cats by far. Number 2, by the way, is feline heartworm. Also, they may throw a clot, a thromboembolism, and I'll let you explain what that is, Dr. Mendes, which is, the good news is the cats generally survive that, but there's bad news regarding that too. Or they very, very quickly just simply go into heart failure. But as I said, the good news is some cats never have any symptoms whatsoever, and they don't get the email. They never even find out that they're ill. However, for those other cats, which is the majority that I described, the quality of life over a course of time, or quite quickly, or over many years, it depends, may suffer significantly. And I'll let you take it from there, Doctor.
Well, when you talked about clots, we kind of talk about these in humans, and many times we think about strokes and things occurring like that. But the most common one that we see in cats, though, is we typically see what's known as a saddle thrombus, where that clot gets caught basically near the lower back and starts to cut off the blood flow to the lower half of the cat.
I have to say, as a veterinarian treating cats, this is one of my most dreaded emergencies, because the call is almost always the same. It's my cat fell down the stairs and it won't get up, or my cat just started screaming and it won't get up. It's very, very painful, and expensive to treat, and in my experience, not as treatable as I would like.
Well, many of the cats that do present, in fact, the vast majority that present with this, whether it be one leg or 2 legs, wherever that clot gets stuck, end up being euthanized because of the high levels of pain and the cost of treatment, and then also the expectation that it can occur again. Once this has happened, we start to have to think about medicating the heart and managing the heart, because this is where the clot came from. And this disease, even if we fix the back end where the clot happened, we're still going to have the heart disease to manage as well. So that becomes a fairly large and many times surprising financial burden for people. And so we're trying to manage the quality of life for the cat and the ability, which we always, we have so many conversations in the clinic about finances and medicine that I'm a huge supporter of pet insurance as well. It helps really start to make that conversation more about the pet health and the quality of life for the pet, as opposed to this very emotional and difficult decision for owners about very tough factors.
It's also, I think, added stress in that moment. Cats are so amazingly adept at hiding pain. And when you have a cat that is screaming in pain, like, oh, and then having to make quick financial decisions, sophisticated decisions, like I said, I don't like to hear when they're coming in.
So I want you to ask your questions here, friends. And someone has texted me a question. I'll take it. I'll take it any way I get it. That's fine. And it's a question that's right up your alley, Dr. Menges, because the question is, I have a Maine Coon cat or not. I think she's a mix with Maine Coon in her. Is it true that Maine Coons are more predisposed? So are some breeds more predisposed to what we're talking about than others?
Yes, that's absolutely true. The Maine Coons, the two health markers that we test for right now, one is called the Maine Coon, or colloquially called the Maine Coon health marker, and the other is called the Ragdoll, and that's just because of the breeds that they were found in. So those breeds are naturally more predisposed to having those. So if you are concerned about that, and you think your cat may be a mix, like I say, go to our website. It's www.basepaws.com. You can get one of our kits, and we'll be able to test for those health markers as well, and help you understand a little bit more on there. That being said, they're not the only diseases. Sphinxes, Bengals, and we have a lot that roll around. NC State's also running some studies as well besides us.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about what Basepaws does. So the reason that we can get this kind of information is because you've been able to get DNA now from lots and lots and lots and lots of cats. So you can focus in on what changes in the DNA have a significance in their health. Walk me through that process. Why is that valuable?
Well, so for health markers, the basis of all of our health marker testing is literature, scientific literature. This can't be something that we make assertions about. The genetic code is so complicated that we're working to tease out more and more information, but all of this information must be verified and peer-reviewed and understood from there. And so we have some great information behind, for instance, the health markers for HCM. Now, the way that we do our process, one that's really exciting, is we do it by sequencing. And what that means is that we actually go down base pair by base pair by base pair. So, for example, for a single health marker, one thing that, just so that y'all get an idea, is when we sequence it, we don't just sequence it a couple times and then decide if it's positive or negative, or heterozygous, homozygous, or completely clear. Our reads are actually more around the 6,000 numbers. So we'll read a section about 6,000 times, so that we make sure that we get the right amount of kind of ratio, make sure that we get both sides of that genetic marker, so that we can really be sure about what we're looking at.
And this is pretty sophisticated science. How do you explain to the average cat parent what you do, and if someone goes to your website, how do they understand what's going on? I mean, it's kind of, you're pretty smart there, Dr. Menges.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that last statement, but we've actually had a lot of help from the human genetics side. I will say our education job has become a lot easier because of the popularity of services like 23andMe or Ancestry.com, who have been doing this and familiarizing our population, our kind of consumer population, with genetics and genetic testing for the last decade or so. The first getting people into the ideas that there is code that allows or provides the foundation for our bodies is such a huge step in itself that has really been taken care of. Once we can get to that, we can start to easily talk about how there's two versions of it, kind of one from your mother and one from your father, if everything's working normally, and then move into why or how these affect each different disease.
So can you circle back on the heterozygous homozygous comment and tell me what that means?
Of course.
I slept that day in vet school.
No worries. So homozygous means that you have two copies of a marker of some sort. So if we look at the Maine Coon, which is also known as the A31P mutation, if you have two copies of that, then you're homozygous. If you have one copy, if you have kind of a normal wild type, just normal occurring copy that does not have a mutation, allows for normal heart disease or normal heart function, and then one that causes the disease itself, then that's called heterozygous. Hetero means different and homo means the same. So for hetero, it means we have two different copies, and then homo means we have the two same.
So to have the disease show up, do I need the two of the same mistakes? How does it work? If I have one mistake and one good one?
Yes.
So
it depends on the disease. For HCM, it's a little bit more complicated. It is not quite as cut and dry as you need two. You need one. It is more risk-based. So we have had cats that have one copy that have gone through their entire lives and never actually shown physical signs for it, but then they also have very degenerative signs. So for the Maine Coon, it's expected that if you have one copy of the disease or one copy of the marker, your cat is about 1.8 times more likely to develop physical signs of the disease. Now, if you have two, it's about 18 times. So it's huge.
And that's a great lead-in to backing it up, back to what I asked way back when about specific breeds. So you rattled some off. I do want to say that you missed the Persian because because unfortunately we see it a lot in Persians. The exotic cat as well, which is like a Persian in many ways. But other breeds as well. That's one bucket. Another is it runs in families. So independent of breed, mix, or anything else, it runs in families. So you adopt a cat from a shelter, you have no idea the grandfather of that cat. I mean, how could you? That's the other. And the third thing is it can occur spontaneously. And now it does run in families if that cat is bred. So how do we know all that? Well, we know all that because of a cat I had. So, which is the opening for me. So I did have a cat named Ricky, who I will talk about on May 30th. And Dr. Menges and I will tell you momentarily what we're doing on May 30th, which is very exciting. I'm really excited about it. This cat changed my life. This cat taught me everything I know about cats. This cat adjusted my thinking because I was, cats are independent, they're aloof, they're not any of that. And this cat showed me and millions of others the way, because this cat also became a TV star. Much bigger than me, appearing on countless national TV shows in America, but elsewhere around the world too, which I had somewhat forgotten about, actually, Dr. Menges. And then I wrote a blog post about it, and I thought, oh yeah, he did appear on Japanese TV. I don't know what they said about him, but and this cat did all that because the cat played the piano. I'll talk about what that means, how that came to be, and not only played the piano, talk about talent. This cat could have been on America's Pet's Got Talent, if there was such a show, because he would jump through hoops, literally, could come when called, which is amazing, but also give a high five and roll over and do all of these other things. So if I had 3 dogs that I could do a downstay with, he would jump, and even if he hadn't met the dogs before, would jump over one, jump over another for a treat.
Wow.
This cat was amazing and spent much of the day just sitting here on my shoulder. And the cat was diagnosed with what we're talking about, feline hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And then one day, suddenly, and I remember 4 rooms away from where I am now, just fell over. And it's what Dr. Bales is talking about, just fell over and succumbed to the disease, which we knew he had. That's our dog. That is not a cat. Ricky the cat could do a lot of things, but he could not bark. So I began a fund with the Winn Feline Foundation to raise money because so here it was diagnosed, and the amazing veterinary cardiologist, Dr. Michael Luthi, a legend in veterinary cardiology, he's in the Chicago area, I'm in Chicago. He said, well, now we know what it is, but I can't do much. And I thought after our cat died, we need to do something about this. This is so common, yet so little can be done. Sometimes even diagnosed at that point in time, but nothing really could be done to treat, and certainly nothing to prevent. So I began what has been called the Ricky Fund with the Winn Feline Foundation. And the way in which we know about those genetic markers in Ragdoll and Maine Coon that you mentioned is by research that we funded with Dr. Kate Mears, actually, with the Winn Feline Foundation Ricky Fund. We've raised several hundreds of thousands of dollars now, which in the cat world anyway, is a fair amount of money.
Tell people what the Winn Feline Foundation is.
Thank you. So that's what the Winn Feline Foundation is.
Short and sweet.
The Winn Feline Foundation funds cat health studies. So if those of you are watching, like Julie, if you have a cat, that cat, pretty much everything we know about was once studied or funded by those that do the studies by the Winn Feline Foundation for over 50 years now. It's the only organization on the planet like it that exists solely to fund cat health studies.
And it was through them that recently, as Steve, you're way more on top of these dates than I am, but the drug remdesivir that we're hearing so much about was pretty much thrown away because it didn't work for Ebola, which is why it was developed.
Right.
And it was a cat researcher that really delved into it with funding from the Winn Feline Foundation, where he found that FIP, which is feline coronavirus, responded to remdesivir. And that's really where the human market got these ideas from that are now shortening disease by 3 or 4 days, which is, if you're the one suffering, it's incredible.
Well, and it could save a life because the way COVID-19 works, apparently, is you can get better, you can get better, you can get better and go home, or you can get better, you can get better, you can get better, you're about to go home, and then you sink, so you're not going to sink if you're on this drug. So yes, you're totally correct. We know about this drug's potential use for the human novel coronavirus only because of the work that had been done by Dr. Niels Peterson at the University of California, Davis, which the Winn Feline Foundation funded. And I do know a lot about the Winn Feline Foundation in part because I've served on their board for about 15 years or give or take that period of time. But we know nearly everything we know about feline hypertrophic cardiomyopathy because of research that has similarly been funded by Winn Feline. And both of you will understand that we have funded research for specific drugs, hoping it would help these cats with HCM. And what do you know? Doesn't do it. Doesn't do anything. But that's science, right, Dr. Bales? I mean, sometimes the only way is through a clinical trial. And we were hoping for better, of course. And the hope is that we will get better, and we're determined to not only help Ragdoll and Maine Coon, for which there is now a cheek swab test that breeders can simply and inexpensively, which is important to me, take a cheek swab and determine if a gene defect is there. It's not a perfect test. It's a test for a specific gene defect. There are others, right? However, it's a start, and it's a start of understanding. We need to be able to do this for other breeds, but ultimately for all cats we need to help. So
yeah, Julie has a question here.
Hi, Julie.
She breeds Savannah.
Julie, do you love me? You remember that song? You probably don't.
Sorry. She breeds Savannahs, and she wants to know what the best way is to test her breeding animals so that they don't pass it along. Is there a recommendation from all that research about when to test and how often?
Well, I don't know, and Dr. Menges, you can chime in here. I don't know how you can, unfortunately, I wish we had a test specific to savannas. They're to date, except for what Basepaws does may be able to help, and Dr. Menges can answer. To date, the answer is if you see it, then stop breeding those individuals. But that's not easy to do if you're a breeder, and you have to kind of carefully do a workaround and kind of figure things out. There is no instant answer as far as I know, Dr. Menges.
There is no instant answer. You know, it looks like she has been screening for, Julie, looks like you have been screening genetically. Use the optimal selection, which tests for those markers as well. I will say you don't need to screen genetically multiple times throughout the year. Of course, you know, you screen once and you're done from there. With the echoes, exams, she talks about doing echoes and exams, which is great if you're able to do the echoes for them. If you do have cats that are expected to be kind of higher risk, if you do have a family line or anything like that, and you're trying to breed those, typically those exams are annual checkups. Not all hypertrophic cardiomyopathies cause an audible murmur for a veterinarian. And there are a variety of things that can confound when you're listening for a murmur, like, the cat has moved from its environment. It's in a new clinic, it's stressed, there may be kids in the room, and a subtle murmur can be missed on there as well. So the best way to do it is, if you do have risks for it, and you have already genetically tested, is to get those echo exams annually from there.
So I want to just slow it down with all this, because it's a lot, like I said, a very complicated scientific information. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that there's a specific test for Maine Coons.
Ragdolls too.
And ragdolls, which is what I apparently only like cats with big hearts.
Well, that's because you have one.
So those are breed specific. And what about for the every cat? So to find out if my cat has the gene for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, do I have to have a breed that has a specific test, or is there a test for general cats?
So when we say specific, what that really means is that these mutations were found originally within those breeds. So for instance, Maine Coon was originally found by Dr. Mirazover in the Maine Coons themselves on there. So if you have something, and it's actually a fairly high prevalence, high 20s on there. So if you do have a cat that can be coming from that Maine Coon heritage, it can have that marker. Now, that marker itself is just a change in the genetics. We can look for that genetic change in any cat in any breed on there, or kind of any cat in any breed, but we've seen it most commonly in Maine Coons themselves, and same with the ragdolls from there. But for our cats with unknown heritage, we would typically see that coming from either a pedigreed cat, or maybe a cat that just has no longer went somewhere and now started to breed away things. But if we have a lot of cats that just have HCM and are unknown, and we have to be able to identify those as a negative to then learn about if there's another problem that go on. One thing to kind of point out is in humans, HCM is also a huge problem. At this point in time, there's over 1,500 causative mutations that have been discovered.
So what that means to someone who's not a geneticist, there's 1,500 different things that they found in the DNA that can be 1,500
yes.
different things that can be responsible for causing hypertrophic cardiomyopathy in people. Is that right?
That's correct. And we have 2 in cats.
And we have 2. So in all likelihood, there's a lot more. But what I think I'm hearing you say is it gets really tricky, because to be able to get the information that you need huge numbers of study participants. Mm-hmm. And then you also need lots of information about their health over the course of their life. Mm-hmm. So that you can piece together the known illnesses with the possible changes on the strips of printouts that you're reading. Is that right?
That's correct.
So that's where Basepaws is really special. because without a way to get all of that information from huge numbers of cats and then follow those cats throughout their life with devoted owners who are willing to give us the science, give you the science, there's no way to know this. And I think that the general public, we just think this stuff just happens. It only happens because of lots and lots of money. These are extremely expensive endeavors with machinery and reagents and, you know, all the stuff that we need to make this happen. So for human beings, my cousin's husband is Fred Kaplan, who does a disease that it takes 2 days to say the name, but it's where injury in your soft tissue turns to bone. Super interesting. But the only way he's been able to find out what's going on is with huge amounts of money and funding and following these people who are identified as having this disease all over the world because there's so few of them. So human research tends to get lots of money. If we're going to go to the next step, dog research gets money, but not lots. And cat research is really the last nickel that we scrape from between the car seats, if we're lucky.
Yeah, you're right. Unfortunately, and it's
so
I don't know why that is, but you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask you about, Dr. Menges, is given everything Dr. Bales said, which is very, very true, we have a long ways to go. Now, the good news is that you're here now. And, you know, the Winn Feline Foundation is going to work our tail off, so to speak, as long as we have the money and as long as researchers come to us and say, we'd like to study this, and our scientific advisory group says this makes sense for us to spend money on, we'll continue to do that. But independently, happy to work with others that are doing the same thing. And that's what you're doing. So one thing you're doing right now is if you have a cat that you know, or know someone who has a cat, or know someone who knows someone that has a cat that has HCM, you're interested in that cat. Explain what folks can do.
Absolutely. Well, so we already have a research program that's up and running where we're starting to collect more and more samples. One of the reasons that we are so excited about being able to help is that we use the sequencing itself, which means we sequence down to things that we know and things we don't know. It gives us a lot of information for cats that don't have these markers, that still have an HCM issue. And so we have a program that is our research program. You can go basepaws.com and then /research or /science on there and apply for our program where if your cat does have HCM and it has been confirmed by a cardiologist with an echocardiogram and also doesn't have hyperthyroidism or high blood pressure, which is usually delineated out in that echo which exam as well, because those can also cause the same type of disease, looks about the same, that same HCM physical manifestation. Then we'll go ahead and confirm that, talk with you, and send you a free kit. You'll be able to swab your cat, send it back in, and get a free breed and health marker report from there.
Yeah, and you sent me a kit, by the way. I think I have a problem, though. I didn't know it was for the cat. I know, it's not good. So the good news is, friends, you can get, so there's 2 buckets here I'm talking about. If you have a cat with HCM, you get a kit. I believe it's free. And yep. And
as long as you meet the criteria, yep. And we'll talk you through that.
Okay. So that's one thing. And all you do is take a cheek swab. I mean, you're not giving the cat a shot. You're worse, not giving the cat a pill. You're certainly not giving the cat a bath. You're just swabbing, you know, in there, and it takes 2 seconds, literally about 2 seconds to do. The other is a general kit that'll give you, you have to pay for this one, but it'll give you information about your cat. Some of it is fun, just fun. And some of it, I would argue, is kind of useful too. And for that, 1% of the proceeds, do it now. 1% of the proceeds goes to the Winn Feline Foundation if you do it before the end of the month. And I think it's basepaws.com for that.
Yes.
Hey, and you know what's really cool also that I love that you're doing at Basepaws is you stay in touch with the people who have submitted samples. And so as your research grows, am I right that you can get in touch with your cat parents and say, hey, this is what we've learned since, 2 years ago, 5 years from now, we hope that you guys have all kinds of new information. So this is kind of an ongoing relationship. Is that right?
Yes, it's an ongoing relationship. I'm gonna speak to Steve real quick first on there. For each of those kits at basepaws.com, we are doing $5 for every kit is going to the Ricky Fund for the rest of the month, and we're so excited to be able to support that. So if you don't have a cat with any of the diseases, go ahead, come on out, buy the kit. You'll also be buying the kit, learning more about your cat and health markers, supporting feline genetic research, and supporting the Ricky Fund all at the same time. So it is such a great initiative and partnership on there. So we'd love to see you go.
And we'll put a link for that underneath this so people can learn about it.
All right, perfect. Yeah, just link straight on over there and you'll see our site. We have all of our cats up there. There are a bunch of cats on our homepage now that are actually, a lot of them are user submitted photos. And so those are all people who have joined and helped out. That changes regularly so that you can be a part of our movement as well. And I got so excited about Steve's question. I got so excited that I dropped a little bit. I can't remember what your question was.
This is an ongoing relationship. So as you guys get more science, you tell the people who submitted samples to you what's up, right?
Yes, and so particularly around the area of breed genetics. In dogs, we've had this huge long-term commitment to understanding breed genetics, and dogs have really changed their bodies for specific jobs over the years, whether it be retrievers or all down to terriers from there. There's some very, very drastic changes. In cats, we haven't had as many occur. Cats kind of signed up for their own job, and then which was hunting. Which was hunting, and is now.
I know what you're saying. Because I'm sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Bales has this brilliant way in which cats can hunt indoors called the hunting feeder. Check that out, friends. Before we let time get away from us, because we don't have much of it, and we should have started with this, on Saturday, Dr. Menges has to put up with me yet again. So together, we are talking about, I'm going to talk in more detail about this amazing cat that truly changed my life, that I will never be able to forget. The good news is that this cat, in a sense, is helping other cats now with the Ricky Fund through the Winn Feline Foundation. So I'm going to talk about this cat who was featured in every media. Letterman asked this cat to do stupid, and I didn't travel with him at that point because he was diagnosed, but I'll talk about that. We'll even play, remember Paul Harvey on the radio, the rest of the story, that dude? Well, he featured Ricky twice. I mean, people were enamored. I'll play one of the Paul Harveys, but I'm going to talk about the human-animal bond a bit as well. And then Dr. Menges is going to talk in more detail about the genetics of this disease and what this disease is and how you, if you have a cat, can kind of look for subtle signs potentially of this disease. It's Saturday. I have information on my blog. You can go to your Facebook page, I presume, Doctor, not your personal page. I meant Basepaws Facebook page to learn about it.
And Steve, send me a link and we'll put that link underneath this as well. So we make sure that it's easy to get all this information.
Absolutely. And it'll be on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/basepaws, as well as our YouTube, if we'll be streaming to both locations.
Oh, but no, this is so expensive for you to see this. So this is literally, if you're not a veterinarian, we welcome you. This is for everyone. But I'd argue veterinary professionals will in part get a kick out of what I'm talking about and also learn from what Dr. Menges will talk about and may enjoy this as well because this disease is so incredibly common. So you'd think the cost, Dr. Bale, for what I'm going to be doing with Dr. Menges would be thousands of dollars, right?
Thousands.
Millions, perhaps. But it is absolutely, it's my favorite four-letter word, free. So easy to do. This is at 12 noon on May 30th, 12 noon Central Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. I suppose do the rest yourself. I don't know.
10 a.m. Pacific. 10 a.m. Pacific.
Thank you. I knew that.
Yeah, and we're so excited to have you, Steve, and be able to help you share this story. And besides that, I'll be going over what we know about the genetics and then the most recent updates about the disease itself. So you'll be able to learn about the disease and some of the early signs of the disease and why this is so important. So many cat owners don't know about the disease until that sudden time period. And that's such an emotionally difficult time period that we want to make sure and try and mitigate and prevent that as much as possible, because the prevention is the way to go as best we can with this disease.
So we have the Winn Feline Foundation, that information we'll link. We have your interview, we're going to link. And then Basepaws, it's just basepaws.com. Is that correct?
Yep.
And we'll put that in the link too. And approximately what's the cost of doing the DNA kit for cats?
The kit itself is normally valued at about $130 on there. But we usually, if you keep an eye out, we have some sales that come down from there. We just had a Memorial Day sale. We're a couple days behind that on there, but still all of the proceeds were in the kit from there as well for the Ricky Fund for around $89.
Right? Were you on Shark Tank? Is that right?
We were on Shark Tank. Yes, we were. We were on Shark Tank a little about a year ago from there.
That's pretty cool. Maybe we should find a link to that episode.
We will try. We will try. ABC is they're not thrilled with sharing things. Free is not their favorite 4-letter word, but it does. We might be able to find little clips every now and then.
Maybe a little small shots.
How was that, by the way, being on Shark Tank?
It was great for the company. Anna, our CEO, was the one that was on there and doing the negotiating, and really was a great experience. It's been a great experience for our company as well, just with some of the extra help that we were able to provide from our sharks.
Who's your shark?
Mr. Wonderful.
Oh, Mr. Wonderful.
Yes.
That's great. It's very exciting. I just am so thrilled when cats get a paw on the main stage. It's very exciting.
And it's so well deserved. And I think we have largely, as a research community, people have given cats as thought of as maybe a harder population to study, harder to categorize than dogs. Dogs, in many ways, do be happy to please in some ways, but we have a lot of very interesting overlap. Cats are much more similar genetically to humans than dogs are, and even that Maine Coon mutation, the A31P mutation, that same exact mutation has been identified in humans as causing HCM as well.
Wow. And so I want to learn about cats to learn about cats. But if you're not concerned about cats, but you're concerned about humans, you never know where great science is going to come from, like Remdesivir. I mean, there's for people who don't know, there's something called One Health, where, we really come to every medical health professional, regardless of the species that you work on, come together and share information, because medicine is an endlessly interesting, often frustrating puzzle. And sometimes it's, you're looking for one of those pieces and the dog ate it, or you're looking for a piece of the puzzle and it's under the table. And the more varied groups of people that are coming together to solve one problem, the higher the likelihood of solving it. So support genetic research. This is amazing. And support the Ricky Fund and Winn Feline Foundation. And keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'm going to tune in on what time, what day?
It is on Saturday, May 30th at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, and 10 a.m. Pacific, and 11 Mountain if we want to do all that.
But I'm not sure what the time would be in Australia.
Is there going to be a time zone quiz?
I think it's the future. That's the future at that point in time.
So maybe we've given that talk there.
We've given that talk. It went great.
I heard it was great. I heard it was great.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Menges, thank you so very, very much for jumping on with us today. Friends, I hope to see you all. Tell your friends if you have a cat fancier, cat breeder that you know. This is certainly should be of interest to that person. But anyone who has a cat, as we both have talked about, all three of us have talked about, this can happen to any cat at any time. There's no predictability necessarily for this, but it would be nice to know what to do if this happens, or better, even to preempt and go to your veterinarian and say, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing this. So I'm a bit concerned, Dr. Bales. You're the best. It's so good to always be on with you.
Had a great time. And Chris, will you come back in the future, because you are doing such amazing stuff. I can't wait to learn about all you uncover at Basepaws.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And Steve, we'll see you. We'll be in a couple days, and I'm so excited to be able to talk and spread the word. So thank you all again for letting me hop on and join y'all.
All right. Until next time. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Her.